There you go. All right, that's a charge of $7.50 per person.
And that's an interesting history. It goes back all the Amamos who built the models that will be in there. We hope to spend time in that part of our museum, and it will be opening not only soon, but in fact Monday. Hours, Rick, what are you?
To begin with, we're going to open at 9 and 7 to 5. See how the traffic runs. We open all this week. The boat building begins Tuesday night from 6 until 8:30. The Door America we teach you. We have 10 people signed up. We still got 5 places.
It is Avenue C.
716 West Avenue C.
716 West Avenue C. About half a block from Cutoff Road. So if you take Avenue C right before you get to Cutoff, you'll see it on the right hand side. Big aluminum building. We established 40 workers. Big sign. Campus. When you go home this evening, put your calendar rolled up. What? We have one more day before you do that anyway. And circle the 12th of February. And then on the 12th of February, if you wake up and you start your day and you discover that the toast got burned that morning. The days are overwhelming. Your beloved life mate got up on the wrong side of the bed. You're just not having a very good day. I will promise you this. You're having a far better day than they had on the 12th of February 150 years ago. Because on the 12th of February of 1862 is when the Civil War came to Mustang Island. And it came dramatically. It came by way of a Navy warship. It came by way of a bombardment by that warship. A shelling of Mustang Island by that ship. It came by way of sailors and Marines coming ashore and burning homesteads and taking cattle and sheep. And it resulted in the abandonment of Mustang Island. The Islanders wisely said, war is striking us here, and there's no place for us. The abandonment of the island returned as late as 1866, 1867. So this is a dramatic piece of island history. In terms of Civil War history, this is a flea on a flea on a flea. This is not a footnote of a footnote of a footnote. Except for the people who live here. Except for those 100 people who were living on Mustang Island on that day. That was significant to them. So let's look at it this evening from that perspective. We're going to look at a little context here. And the context is looking at our area relative to some important dates. When Texas seceded from the Union, which was March 1861. A footnote to that. You all know who Sam Houston is? General Sam. I consider him truly the father of Texas. Technically that is Stephen Austin. But it was General Sam who led a ragtag army of revolutionaries against a well-ordered army from Mexico. And at the battles of the San Jacinto in 1836 defeated that army and earned the right for Texas to become a republic. And it was his guidance and his statesmanship and his military prowess that led to that victory. Once he became a governor of the republic, he spoke very ardently for getting Texas into the Union. A lot of people wanted Texas to remain a nation, independent republic. And Sam Houston said economically that doesn't make sense. We're in debt now. And Sam Houston orchestrated a lot of energy for getting Texas into the Union, which occurred in December of 1845. When Texas seceded from the Union, Sam Houston was an ardent opposer of that. He said, do not leave the Union. I do not approve that. He was governor at the time, state governor. He was governor in and out several times during his tenure. Despite his words, his guidance, the state legislature voted to secede in March, and they did that. And Sam Houston promptly loaded up his family and moved out of the governor's mansion, essentially saying, I will not govern a state that I think has made a dramatic error in his destiny, in his road. And of course, he was how true that was. At any rate, when the Civil However, there were about 12 or so homesteads here. A homestead being a house, they outbuildings. Everyone had cattle and sheep. Some people had it commercially, mainly for just purposes of food staples. North of Mustang, of course, we had St. Joseph Island. That was founded 10 years earlier than Mustang Island, 1845. Therefore, it had a few more homesteads than we had. And plus, it had that little black triangle. It had a small town port called Aransas. Continuing on to the north, Aransas Bay, Buffalo Bay, focused a little bit on those black. We have a new machine tonight. You can see the works on the black triangles there. That is Lamar, which is still there. And these two little places on Pocono Bay are gone. Pocono and St. Mary's. But these three places were very active ports at this point. The main port in our area was, of course, Corpus Christi, Texas, founded in 1839. How did you get to Corpus Christi? You could do it two ways. From the Gulf, you could come through Corpus Christi Pass, which separated Mustang and Fire Island. But that was not the reliable way. Corpus Christi Pass was given to Silton Inn, a very temperamental pass, and therefore ships could not access through. On the other hand, the Aransas Pass was always reliable. It was a deeper pass, it was a more predictable pass, and that's the way people got to Corpus Christi. They came through the Aransas Pass. Today, you would take a left and go down the ship channel. Then, before the ship channel, you had to go around this island. You'll see this on the map in a moment, and loop around and call the deep water. So there was no natural channel here. That was dredged in 1926. And that's the channel you pass over on the ferry boat. Okay. The homestead on Mustang Island. This photo was taken in about 1919. But my research on what the homesteads looked like at the start of the Civil War tells me that they were very much like this. Very rough-hewn places. Mustang Island had no trees. So the lumber came from all imports. The cut lumber came mainly from Sabine in Galveston, Texas, imported by ship. What little wood Mustang Island had was by way of deposit or driftwood. And that was a daily chore in these homesteads to collect the driftwood. The kitchen food fire demanded fuel every day. And during the cold months, the fireplaces in the homes demanded wood and deposit on our beach that provided that. To give you a sense of what things looked like on this thing in those many, many years ago, I love this little prime mover in those days, like a little wagon, and I'm sure that that's probably how they collected their driftwood, pulled by an oxen or a horse. Let's look at our map again. But now let's change our context a little. Let's look at that same map relative to our area being a very rich maritime and land transportation system, which trips the topic of cotton mechanics. And here we have to understand a little bit of the context of the American Civil War. When the Confederate States of America decided to become a nation apart from the United States, they realized that President Lincoln would oppose that militarily, which he did, in order to preserve the Union. The South also understood that it did not have an industrial might to take on the North. I read somewhere that there was only one cannon factory in all of the South. I believe in Birmingham. The North was one of the industrial leaders of the world. Remington Arms, still in business today in Connecticut. Numerous cannon factories, manufacture of powder, shot. The North was ready to fight a serious war. It had the industrial might. It had the war materials. So the South knew it was going to have to acquire war materials of their own. And the way they were going to do that was they were going to spend their white gold. Their white gold were bales of cotton. The clothing mills of England and France for generations had depended on Southern cotton to feed into their wardrobes, their fashions of the day. So the beautiful textures or the mills in France and England. The material for those clothing, for the beautiful draperies, was southern cotton. When the war commenced, England and France did not want to lose that colony. And so they struck a deal with the South, or the South struck a deal with them. And the South said, we will provide you cotton, we will continue to do that in exchange for war materials. And so, that's my little expression, cotton for cannons. Our area fit into that scheme very nicely. All of the area you see here are cotton fields. And Camp Texas still has some of those historic cotton fields even today. The cotton could come to Corpus Christi, Texas. It could then be shipped overseas, and the ship could return to Corpus Christi full of war materials. On the other hand, an English ship full of war materials could sail into Corpus Christi, drop off the war materials, load the cotton, and go back to England. And that's also true for these other areas up here. They're a little smaller towns. They also have the same flexibility of cotton in, weapons, or cotton out, weapons in. So when you look at the South's strategy for effecting cotton for cannons, the Texas coast played into the general scheme of things. Now, the North was as aware of this as the South was. As a matter of fact, one of the first war plans the North effected, one of their first war strategies, was to break the cotton for cannon linkage. And to do that, they would blockade southern shipping. They would prevent southern ships taking cotton to Europe, and they would prevent European arms coming into southern ports. And they would do that by a blockade mechanism. In fact, when they looked at the Texas coast, and the part of the northern military that looked at that was called the West Gulf Blockading Squadron, they set aside a part of the U.S. Navy specifically for our little part of the coast, mainly for Corpus Christi. That's what they really want to shut down. But the way to shut that down is to look at the Federal Navy mission. It was twofold: blockade, enemy shipping. And if you want to stop shipping going through Corpus Christi, the Aransas Pass was how ships got there. You blockade the Aransas Pass. You functionally take out Corpus Christi, as well as these other places. Neutralize enemy ports. Each of the places you see here, Lamar, Pocono, St. Mary's, and Corpus Christi, each of those places was visited by the Federal Navy during the Civil War. And wards and piers were burned. And so the Federal Navy was very effective in their blockading action and their degrading of the neutralization of enemy force. The coastal bend mission of blockade and neutralization was given to a man named Lieutenant John W. Kittredge. He was in New York. He volunteered to serve in the United States Navy when the war broke out, and Kittredge was an excellent choice to take the coastal bend mission. He was an excellent choice because he was a sailor. Number two, he had been the captain of a cargo ship that plied the Texas coast before the war, from Galveston all the way down to the Rio Grande River. So Kittredge knew the Texas coast. He knew the Aransas Pass. He knew what was almost there. So he was a very, very smart decision, a good decision for the West Gulf Blockading Squadron to put in charge of the coastal bend mission. Okay, let's turn down the microscope power here, if you will, and let's start talking about the assault piece of history. Can you do that? We're going to focus on this part or on that. 4 February 1862. USS Halter, that's Kittredge's warship, arrived from the Portland shipyard where it left in December of 1861, arrived off of the Aransas Pass at Cook Station on the 4th of February 1862. USS Halter, what did she look like? USS Halter was a bark-type sailing ship. There are a lot of different kinds of sailing ships. There's schooners, there's sloops. The bark is a type type of sailor ship that is configured as you see it here. That is not the USS Alter. This is a beautiful bark sailing ship that Mark Crichton, buzzing around the Gulf of Mexico in his airplane, as he does almost every other week at least, saw in the Gulf and snapped that beautiful photograph. Mark, tell us about this. Was she off the Aransas Pass? Where did you find this vessel?
About 14 miles off, out of gliding distance.
Out of gliding distance. So his little engines had stopped. They would have picked him up in the Gulf of Mexico. He would not have glided back. Was she headed toward the pass or coming out?
Heading into Corpus Christi.
You can then almost envision, if you roll this back to 1862, that vessel going into harm's way. An enthusiastic crew of federal sailors willing to go into harm's way to preserve the Union. A long, long way from home. If you think about the South, we're at the edge of the South. I mean, this is as far at the edge of the Confederacy as there was. 292 tons displacement. The USS Alter had 6 naval artillery pieces, 6 cannons. And I used a little bit of computer magic to insert some weapons there and circle them red. A very strange thing happened when Kittredge arrived. Soon after he arrived, somewhere between the 4th and the 10th of February, he ran up a white flag, got in a small skiff, and had his sailors row him ashore on the same island under a white flag. He wanted to parlay. He wanted to talk to the Mustang Islanders. He wanted to have a conversation. And here's why he did that. When the USS Alter was going to run out of food, which it would do, it would run out of food eventually. His warship would run out of water, fresh water. Kittredge was too far away from his home port to go back and resupply his ship. His home port was New Orleans. The North had taken New Orleans early in the war. But that's 700 miles away. For a sailing ship, that would take a good 2 weeks to negotiate back and forth. And he couldn't leave his post for that. So he knew that to reprovision his food stores and his food lockers, he would have to come on the Mustang Island and take water, cattle, and sheep. That was a necessity. Second, Kittredge knew that he was going to investigate some of the back waters. That's the lighthouse right there. He knew that he was going to come ashore, check out the lighthouse, which was still functioning. When Texas seceded, by the way, the lighthouse, which was built in 1857, that was federal property. When Texas left the Union, the lighthouse people walked away. Said, well, they're not going to pay me. And the lighthouse went dysfunctional for the entire war. But Kittredge was going to be very interested in that as a sailor of, hey, is it still viable? Or is the land still good? Could it still be used by the Federal Navy in a year from now? So he knew he would be going back and forth across the Aransas Pass quite a bit with his sailors. He knew his sailors would come on to Mustang Island to resupply their ship. And he sat down with the islanders and said this: let's do a deal. I'm not here to do war against non-combatants. I'm not here to make war against people who are not raising arms against the United States of America. I have got the colonial islands where my men can eat and drink. I will be going through the Aransas Pass to conduct my mission. So let's do a deal. You leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. You don't interfere with my missions, I won't interfere with your life. I won't bring military arms onto this island. I won't bring a military presence. It's Kittredge's impression that when he left that meeting, the islanders had struck an agreement and said, okay, I agree. Therefore, on the 11th of February, that'd be just a day or at most a week after this meeting, Guthrie was in a small boat going to the Aransas Pass, from investigating the lighthouse property. And he's returning to the USS Alter when he was fired at by 6 islanders, civilians, islanders, Mustang in a high noon right here. They took aim and they fired their muskets at the Federal sailors in their small boat. The sailors returned fire. Luckily, no one was injured. And Guthrie returned to the USS Hall. When he got back on the yard, he knew he had to respond to this. He had to respond to that aggression. He was also irritated and angry, and that he felt a gentleman's agreement had been broken. That Islanders had said, essentially, your offer of a non-aggression act is accepted, and then they had overtly gone out of their way to transgress it. The thing he did was, the next morning, the assault on Mustang Island had two phases. The next morning, he flew forward from his, still learning my system, from his station that was opposite the pass here, off Mustang Island. And I would say that that would be about where today, about where the pier is. I would say that that's about the horsepower pier left of the island. He bore into about a half mile offshore, and he opened fire. He started a bombardment of the settlement area of Mustang Island. In one place, the clubhouse, Thomas C. Clubhouse, was set aflame by that bombardment. Phase 1. Phase 2. The bombardment lifted probably about 10:30, 10:45. And once it lifted, Guthrie sent ashore a landing, a group of Federal sailors in a small boat, probably several small boats. They were there for two reasons. One, to take away cattle, sheep, and water, to resupply their ship, as he said they were going to do. And secondly, they expressly went there to torch, set fire to the Mercer home. And later they asked why he did that. Guthrie said, when we were shot at by the Islanders, I recognized Mercer's son as one of the shooters. And it was his son that had apparently led the Islanders saying, we'll accept your terms. So Guthrie felt very betrayed. He said, I had to respond, that's why I burned the Mercer home. If you know the name Mercer, you know that that's probably one of the most famous names on this island. Their ranch was the Elmore Ranch, destroyed during the Civil War for the reasons that I suggested to you. Mustang Island was subsequently abandoned into a war stand. Soon after that, and the archives are very sketchy here, I'm going to make the assumption that the other islanders did what the Mercers did, for which we know they went to New Oasis Bay by Corpus Christi. Soon after the bombardment, and they stayed here until about 1866. I'm going to assume, and there's some reason to believe the assumption is valid, all the other islanders did similar. Not necessarily to New Oasis Bay, some went to St. Joe Island, some went to Lamar, some went inland. The Kittredge era. Lieutenant Kittredge, if you look at it from a southern perspective, would be called the scourge of the coastal belt, because he was effective. He did blockade the Aransas Pass. He did interdict southern shipping. He disrupted the cotton for cannon economy. If you look at it from a northern perspective, you would call it the hero of the coastal belt for all the accomplishments that he made. The high point of his era, the Kittredge era, came when he sailed his little task force of 5 ships, 1, 2, 3, 4, directly into Corpus Christi, dropped anchor, ran up a white flag. Kittredge loved these little conferences under white flags. Put on his dress uniform and had his sailors row him into the Corpus Christi wharf. He was met by a Confederate officer, Alfred Hobby, and Major Hobby said, what can I do for you? And Guthrie says, I'm here to inspect the warehouses on your pier. They belong to the United States government. I'm an agent of that government, and I'm here to inspect them. Major Hobby said, there is nothing in Corpus